at all.
Her chances of living 5 years with this was about 40%.
I felt like she was asking me, and she probably asked a number of people, what do you think I should do here?
To poison my body in order to cure my body didn't make sense. My quality of life at that point in my life is more important than anything.
Welcome to The Incurables. I'm Don Wildman. Mary Pat Palmer's life had always been about the experience. The final destination wasn't so important for this California native. It was the odyssey of the journey that provided her fulfillment. But as she reached middle age, Mary Pat's journey was suddenly interrupted by a diagnosis that threatened to end it all. In the blink of an eye, she found herself under the harsh lights of an operating room. It was a most unnatural setting for a woman who preferred to let nature take its course. Mary Pat's most dangerous experience would test just how brightly her free spirit could shine, with death knocking at her door.
I had just lost 2 close friends from colon cancer. So I knew this was very serious, but another part of me was saying, you know, the buck stops here. I think we've lost enough people recently. I don't want to be another one.
I could tell she was very frightened, and was obviously very frightening to those of us that love her so much.
I think that my first tendency was really to kind of give up. I kind of turned it over to the doctors.
I think I was totally in shock. I think that it was, I was aware of the impact on me, but I was also not really letting it in.
It was such a difficult time for my brother and I, because we thought that she was lost forever.
Mary Pat grew up among the redwood forests of California's Central Coast. Summers in Carmel and Big Sur helped cultivate her independence and willingness to go against the grain.
As a kid, I was very active. I was a swimmer. I think a little mischievous. I think that was kind of encouraged in my family, actually.
She and my brother had a real reputation in town for doing things like putting dye in the swimming pool at our high school. So I grew up with my brother and sister just absolutely being the terrors of the neighborhood, but spoken of very fondly.
When she left California after high school, Mary Pat wandered the country taking classes at a variety of universities. But most of all, she was absorbing all life had to offer. She married and had a daughter, Maya, and the young family continued along its unique path.
We moved when I was 6 months old to Vermont, and I lived on a commune.
I was just in high school, and I would visit them frequently, and that's when I really got to know my sister pretty well. She's just a fabulous human being. Really, I just always look forward to going up and spending time with her.
Communal living was hard work for Mary Pat and her family. They grew their own crops and raised animals for food, but she seemed to thrive in this lifestyle. Surviving the Vermont woods emphasized her self-sufficiency and solidified Mary Pat's belief in herself and in others. However, it didn't hold the same appeal for everyone.
Somewhere during that time period, Mary Pat and Bruce sort of separated, but they still lived there together and brought Maya up for a while. And then at some point, I think after I graduated high school, the commune sort of disbanded and everybody went their own way.
The breakup was not pleasant. Mary Pat was deeply affected by the whole ordeal, and she grew disillusioned with many of the beliefs she had come to rely upon. The experience left her disoriented, and she lost touch for a time with her roots.
Finally, I realized that despite everything else, I could go back to school. Nearby at Goddard College, there was a program of art therapy, and so I went there for graduate school, and began after graduation to be an art therapist in Boston.
Mary Pat's work with children was quite rewarding. She seemed to have an innate sense of what many of her young patients were experiencing. This success motivated her to seek other outlets for her compassion and creativity, to reconnect with life again. She married Bill, her second husband. She studied herbology and enrolled in a workshop that explored the practice of facial diagnosis. The program was not only fascinating and the subject matter captivating. Her instructor, William LaSauciere, may possibly have saved her life.
During the workshop, William came up to me and looked at me and said, "You have something seriously wrong with your large intestine and you have to get it checked immediately." He said it with such authority and clarity that I really heard him and that I did have to find out what was going on.
Mary Pat went to a doctor to see if her lower intestines were indeed abnormal. Routine tests revealed an anemic condition. Her red blood cell count was unusually low. Doctors thought it best to schedule a colonoscopy to further examine the issue. Mary Pat agreed.
It was a fairly routine procedure. Everyone over the age of 50 should have a colonoscopy anyway, and I was at that point over 50. And when they showed me the picture, they showed me a picture of a tumor, and then Bill said, "This says malignant."
Mary Pat's lower intestinal condition was first revealed through an extremely unconventional facial diagnosis. Follow-up tests confirmed a serious malignant tumor in her colon.
Mary Pat's tumor was a 4-centimeter tumor, which is just about a 2-inch tumor. So it's pretty big. It's in the right side of the colon, which is much more thin and expansile. And so tumors there don't start to obstruct or block. So they're found generally a little bit later. Hers was found because she had the low blood count, or the anemia.
To cope with the family and people who love you and how it's going to impact them is incredibly, incredibly difficult. But I also knew that I was having surgery, and I had spoken with the oncologist and I had spoken with my surgeon, and at that time they were sure they could get it out, that I would be clean afterwards, no chemo, no radiation, I would just have the surgery. Then I woke up, came out of surgery, and then they were telling me that I had to have chemotherapy.
It takes about 72 hours for the pathology to come back. And indeed, she had a tumor that had spread to her lymph nodes that drained the colon.
The new prognosis called for 16 chemotherapy treatments.
I was totally shocked by that. I did not expect that at all. Even though I was trained as an herbologist and I knew alternative practices, when I heard that I needed to have chemo, the way that it was presented made me feel, well, this is what I need to do. I need to do chemotherapy.
She thought whatever the doctors say probably is what I ought to be doing.
The oncologist had talked about side effects, but really minimized them a lot.
She then, following the doctor's advice, she had her first session of chemotherapy.
After the chemotherapy, I got in the car by myself, drove to do some shopping, went home, I made dinner, and was feeling that this was working, that the chemo was okay. It was not everything terrible that people had talked about. I felt fine. I went to sleep, and I woke up hours later feeling worse than I had ever felt before. Feeling like every cell in my body was violated. Every cell in my body felt poisoned, which it was.
I could just tell in her voice, I think I was more just a sounding board for her. I could tell that it was not the right choice for her.
I think in a way the chemo scared her more than the cancer.
After that horrendous night, I really tried to understand what I was feeling. I really tried to understand, what am I doing?
I felt like she was asking me, and she probably asked a number of people, what do you think I should do here? I told her, live this vibrant life you've always lived. Make the best of it and celebrate with the people that love you, and don't do the chemotherapy. And I believe that you can beat it. And I believe she knew in her heart she could beat it as well.
I knew I couldn't do any more chemo, no matter what it meant. That my quality was more important than anything, and that I would not poison my body anymore.
Mary Pat Palmer had always felt at one with nature. From her life in a commune to her study of herbal medicine, she had been confident that she could find holistic relief for her ailments. This theory was put to the ultimate test when she discovered she had a deadly tumor spreading throughout her body. Doctors had prescribed conventional treatments which had made her violently ill. Now Mary Pat was determined to take a different approach, one that reflected her core beliefs.
Mary Pat told me that she wasn't going to go through the chemotherapy. And I understood why she didn't want to go through the chemotherapy. And I kind of knew who she was as a person and what she wanted. But it's still very difficult hearing her make that decision and wanting the best for her. And in our medical sense, the best for her. In her case, obviously, to go through the chemotherapy.
Despite warnings from Dr. Fugelso and her oncologist that refusing chemotherapy would likely kill her, Mary Pat decided she would rather take her chances without the treatment.
I just prayed and hoped that she was going in the right direction, and I knew that she was doing all the research she could, and she was talking to all the right people for the path that she chose, and that she would do the very best that she could with it.
I didn't want to be totally in charge of my own decisions when somebody might know a lot more than I did. So I found Master Lee, who was in the same area of Boston. He was a 5-minute bicycle ride from me, and he had the New Life Health Center.
The center specializes in Far Eastern herbal treatments, acupuncture, and nutrition. Because of her natural attraction to alternative therapies, Mary Pat was quick to embrace these techniques. She felt she had to in order to have any hope of survival.
그렇지만서도 키모보다도 수술을 해서 그 부분을 수술했다는 것은 그 자체가 하나 치료를 도와줬을지도 모릅니다. 다만 키모는 지나치게 그 사람에게 사이드 이펙트가 있기 때문에 키모를 그 사람이 앓는다고 하는 것은 그건 뭐 잘한 일이라고 생각합니다.
My first impression of the New Life Health Center was that this was walking into a cancer support group of all different kinds of cancers, different stages, different life-threatening illness, but everyone there for a common purpose, which was to heal.
그때 처음에 메리가 왔을 때는 키모를 받고 나는데 상당히 그 몸이 불편하고 어려웠기 때문에 얼굴이 불망진하는 것도 여러 부분에 많은 지금 기억하기에는 많은 부분에 어려운 점이 여러 가지 문제점을 발견할 수 있었습니다.
Using pulse and facial diagnostic techniques, Master Lee observed that Mary Pat's lymphatic system was severely compromised. He was concerned that with her body in this weakened state, the cancer would quickly consume her. They embarked on an extensive complementary regimen involving, among other things, herbs and acupuncture.
Initially, I just thought that Mary Pat was going to go and see an acupuncturist. And bear in mind, I'm sort of, all this is new to me, or was new to me, and a little bit foreign. But it turned out that it was much broader than that.
He would do acupuncture on me. The acupuncture was in my temples because there is a connection with the temples and the colon. And it was painful. It was deep, it was painful, it was intense, it was daily. In addition, there were teas, and in addition to that, there were supplements. In my case, it was a mushroom called Coriolis.
As part of a revitalizing nutritional program, it was important to get an idea of Mary Pat's current eating habits. When she revealed, hopefully, that she had spent much of her life as a vegetarian, Master Lee was aghast.
What? You are a lion. You must have meat. And I remember thinking, uh-oh, I'm in trouble now.
그러니까 애니멀 프로틴을 넣으면 모든 것은 리미테이션이 있기 때문에 지나치게 애니멀 프로틴을 먹으라는 뜻은 아닙니다. 다른 체질에 비해서 애니멀 프로틴을 먹어주는 것이 바란스를 잡아주는 것이 이민을 올리기도 쉽고 건강을 회복하는 데 쉬운 것입니다.
Even though I hadn't had meat for years and years, and the thought of having red meat, and he was wanting me very much to have red meat, was just astounding, and especially with all the information that if you're a vegetarian you don't get colon cancer. So here's someone saying, no, you have to eat red meat because your iron is low. Now there's a big correlation between anemia and cancer.
Master Lee's treatments also included mental and emotional therapy sessions. It was here that he discovered what he felt might be the devastating root cause of her disease.
I was molested as a child, and I think that that's connected to the colon cancer. I've always believed there's a connection there.
그래서 뭐 직접적으로 캔서 원인이 아니더라도 분명히 간접적으로 하나 원인이 될 수 있습니다. 그 사람이 과거에 있었던 그러한 섹슈얼 비수를 당했을 때 긴장은 계속 비슷한 일을 당했을 때 항상 그걸 긴장했었습니다. 상담하는 과정에서도 상담원의 눈을 감고 어디가 긴장되냐 물어봤을 때 분명히 하반신, 장 이 부분에 엄청 긴장대를 가지고 있었습니다.
The realization that a childhood trauma could possibly be related to her life-threatening condition was ironically uplifting for Mary Pat. Master Lee's other treatments were having a positive effect as well.
As I worked with Master Lee, I became stronger. I remember at one point going out to, I'd been working with him for maybe a month or 2 months, and my second husband and I went to the ocean, and I went out armed with the medicine from Master Lee, his tea and his supplements. I was not getting the acupuncture during those days, but I felt very positive. I felt like, you know, it was a good time. I was at the ocean. It was beautiful. It was wonderful to be alive.
Mary Pat had seen the dark side of chemotherapy, and it had nearly drained the life from her body. But now, on her new regimen of holistic therapies, she began to resemble her old self.
I really did begin to notice a difference, that not only from the psychological perspective, but just the vibrancy. I felt like she really was healing, like she was really getting better.
A very important part of my journey has been the realization that I might die, but I might live, and I was willing to take that risk.
Once she began the treatments with Colin Lee, there was no doubt in her mind that making the decision to forego the chemo was the right thing for her.
She didn't listen to what the doctors thought was right for her. She did what she thought was right for her.
그 사람은 그 사람 자신을 치료한 것입니다. 나는 도와주면서 조그만 부분밖에 없습니다.
Mary Pat feels she has been granted a new lease on life, so she's decided to spend the rest of her days living once more on her terms. She and her husband moved back to California, back to the coastal redwoods of her childhood, back to her daughter, Maya.
When faced with the possibility of death, she just wanted to be back in a community that felt more supportive of her.
Mary Pat had truly developed into a very well-rounded and very solid and stable woman who was just so excited about the promise of being a grandmother, and she found her home.
For years, there were no physical signs of her cancer. Mary Pat felt healthy and safe. She decided to undergo another colonoscopy to confirm that the cancer had remained at bay.
After the colonoscopy, it was a clean colonoscopy. There were no polyps, there were no problems with it, and I was declared safe.
I remember her, I can't remember exactly when, but calling and saying, John, it's gone. And she subsequently was tested periodically, and on each occasion it was gone.
Once you've had cancer, you can never say that it's not going to come back. You can say it hasn't come back yet, and you live with that chronic uncertainty.
It's not like it's gone, even though it is gone. Because if you get another cancer, it's another cancer. It's not the same cancer as a rule.
Hopefully it's cured. Hopefully it'll never come back for her.
특히나 그 메리는 웨스턴 메디슨을 체험을 했고 이스턴 메디슨을 체험을 했습니다. 그 다음에 사이콜로지컬, 사이코소셜 이해가 높은 사람입니다. 그래서 그런 전체적인 치료가 얼마나 중요한가를 다른 사람들이 인식해 줬으면 좋겠습니다.
I am thrilled with my children. I am thrilled with my life. I can say that very clearly.
Forever content to ride the wind wherever it took her, this free spirit landed on an operating table facing death. According to her doctors, her path to recovery was clear. But the only thing Mary Pat knew for sure was that chemo made her sicker. It was her recommitment to a natural approach and its mysterious powers of healing that finally brought everything into focus.